What is the longest 5 minutes you have ever experienced? A presentation about grass. I don't know why we had to watch it, or why they chose to do it. Loading screens in games back when I had a laptop. Being a kid and waiting for my mom to finish talking to friends. I did a bungee jump off the Verzasca Dam in Ticino, Switzerland. Link. It's famous for being in the opening scene of GoldenEye. The jump itself was amazing, but as I bounced up and down after the initial jump, my body rotated and the bungee cord kind of corkscrewed around my legs a couple of times. When the vertical motion finally stopped, I was hanging over a huge drop with a rocky riverbed below, and the cord wrapped right around my legs, giving the impression that it was all that was holding me up. The operators were shouting at me to remove my ankle from the twisted cord so that they could pull me back up. My rational mind knew that I was securely fastened at the hip, but the tension of the cord on my ankle made it feel like I depended on it and that I would fall to my death the second I unwrapped it. I was physically unable to unwrap my ankle for a full 5 minutes while the guys shouted down from the top of the dam, "Monsieur!" Upside down, blood rushing to my head the whole time. Eventually I found the courage to unwrap my ankle and everything was fine. But man, that was the longest, most horrible 5 minutes. Upside down and being asked to go against every instinct of survival. In 5th grade, while the principal was listing off the profanities, I searched on Google Earth the time between a guy who was acting weird and kept approaching me while I was mowing my lawn, who then hid and was watching me from my neighbor's lawn, to when the cops arrested him, "Monsieur." I went inside to call them via my back door. Front was locked, and he followed me and started knocking and scratching against it. I went from hiding on the ground against my back door so he couldn't see me to locked in my upstairs bathroom with a bat by the end of it all. 5 minutes seems like forever when you're terrified. Waiting at the DMV line that lead to the true DMV line. 6 months ago, anesthesia ended too soon while the surgeon was still stitching up my knee after realigning my patella. There were still 3 stitches to go. I still can't decide what was the worst pain, the tourniquet on the top of my thigh or the stitches. The last 5 minutes on a treadmill. When I was a kid, my mom told me to wait online at the supermarket, and then she went to go get some more things. The person who was at the cashier had just paid and the lady in front of me began unloading her not heavily packed shopping cart. She had almost finished loading and was about ready to pay when my mother finally reappeared. Those were simultaneously the longest and the shortest and most terrifying 5 minutes of my life. Trying to help somebody you are certain will bleed out before the ambulance gets there. I was on placement with a doctor and he told a patient that he might lose his leg due to diabetes. It obviously upset him, but the doctor left to go get something, leaving me in the room with him, "Monsieur." He must have been gone for only 2 minutes, but I swear it felt like 20. The guy was quietly sobbing to himself and I had no idea what to do or say. Every time my dad begins a story I've heard 100 times. On the way to a toilet trying to hold back destructive diarrhea in a public place. Very short backstory. I was born with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and have been largely bedridden and wheelchair-bound for the past 6 or so years. Now it's called jaw replace rheumatoid with idiopathic, but I am not sure which branch I belong to. Regardless, because of my disease, my hip replaced when I was 19. Story. Back in November, I was diagnosed with TTP, and was in the process of dying. I was in and out of consciousness, and quickly nearing the state of permanent brain damage, unable to speak properly, knowing what words I wanted to say, and only being able to get out, bathroom, and birthday, quote, plus general confusion. Meanwhile, the doctors in the ICU were hooking tubes to my femoral artery, while wholly unable to understand what I was trying to say, because I had only ever had one problem with my hip in the past, and I had no idea what was going on, other than that I said yes to surgery. Oh, yeah, I could nod or shake my head, but could only say no. I often forget that because the birthday and bathroom thing was so traumatizing. I was sure it was related, which meant something was wrong with my hip replacement. I was then convinced that was the problem, in that I would need weeks to heal. Not that I had during my actual replacement. Now that I think of it. Weird. Anyway, when I was going in and out of consciousness, I thought each time I woke up was a new morning. Weeks and weeks were going by, and I was slowly healing every day. Until one morning I woke up and started to panic. I was feeling better. The pain was gone, so I must have been healed. But if weeks, it possibly even months had gone by, then where was my fiancé? Where was my son? When the panic had fully set in, I was convinced everyone thought I had died, and my fiancé was distraught and killed himself, because it was the only way he would ever not come visit me for so long. And my son was sent to live with his abusive alcoholic of a sperm donor. Absolutely freaking out. Have never felt so vulnerable in my life as I did that moment. I tried desperately to ask the nurse about my fiancé. After about a dozen slowly articulated pleas of birthday and bathroom, I decided to try boyfriend instead, only to come out with birth friend. Thankfully that was enough. My nurse went from giving me a kind, yet frustrated nods to a purposeful rigidity, then said, boyfriend, quote, you want fiancé's name. I nodded like a bobblehead on crack. That's when she said the words that are likely the most relieving thing I've heard to date. He was on his way. When he got there, I had to be sedated because I tried to get out of my bed to climb him like a tree. I never wanted to let him go. A few days later and he was still with me when I was able to start talking again. The first thing I asked my fiancé when he got there, quote, how long have I been here? Quote, to which he replied, quote, 1 day, quote. I'm a paramedic. When the patient isn't doing so hot, I can tell you 5 minutes on the way to the hospital lasts a long-ass time. Wife had a seizure during labor. They couldn't find the baby's heartbeat afterwards and rushed to emergency C-section. Everything stabilized, but it was scary. Seemed to go on forever. 4 years later, everyone is happy and healthy. My son was silent when he was born. The doctor gave me a serious look, handed me the scissors to cut the umbilical cord, and then rushed my son to a table on the other side of the room. I moved to the head of the bed to tell my wife what a great job she did. I honestly have no idea how long it took to hear him cry. But those seconds, minutes were the longest year of my life. He turned 20 last month. Sang a song in front of line 300 people without a monitor, so I couldn't hear shit, but I just knew I was totally off key. Edit. Like asterisk. Waiting to see the doctor to find out if I did or did not have breast cancer. Edit. I do not have cancer. Fire department. I was acting battalion chief because the regular battalion was off for Christmas Eve. Full arrest of a 3-year-old. I arrived on scene first because I was already on the road and close. I performed CPR on that child alone in front of her family at the base of their Christmas tree for what seemed like forever before the engine and medic unit arrived. Checking the times on the dispatch sheet later, it was 4.5 minutes. 2 rounds of CPR. This was almost 5 years ago, and sometimes it still feels like it's happening. I am a police dispatch officer, and I had a 6-year-old girl call in on the emergency number, and the first thing she said was, "There are men here and they are hurting Daddy." The time it took for the first unit to arrive at the scene was the longest minutes in my life. We were lucky we had units nearby. probably the last 5 minutes of my dad's life. They'd done all they could for him, and all that was left was to make him comfortable. We were all with him and sat around as he faded away. He was only 63 too. That was last August, but it feels like it was yesterday. I used to be a firefighter. Quote, my kid is still in there. He wasn't. He was hiding in the bushes next door. A bit frightened, but completely fine. I think that took a few years off my life. I recently had a very frightening sleep paralysis. It probably just lasted for a few minutes, but it felt like ages. Not sure if it was 5 minutes, but felt like a literal eternity. Being on the receiving end of a sexual encounter. When I was 5 years old. It's true what they say. With enough pain, the brain just shuts off. Hard to explain what that was like. I wasn't so much in and out of consciousness as I was in and out of being aware of what was happening. Was kinda like when you're asleep but wake up only to fall asleep over and over again, so things seem dreamlike and unreal. Then you wake up a bit more and the reality of the situation hits you. But then you just go back to sleep and it repeats. I think it lasted at least 5 minutes. But might have been longer. Or maybe shorter. I honestly can't say. Being young and waiting for my mom to pick me up from somewhere and she was late. I have a less harrowing answer as well. The last 5 minutes of an ultrasound on your abdomen. When forced to do so with a full bladder. Especially when I got my appointment wrong and showed up an hour early. I have, in all my 30+ years, never had to pee so badly, lol. Watching sex scenes with parents. I'm an adult now and it still makes me uncomfortable. Oh God. This story still gives me shivers. When my son was 3, our neighbors were getting renovations done, so there were big, noisy trucks everywhere. I was getting ready for work and popped into the laundry adjacent to the lounge room where my son was watching TV, to iron a shirt for work. It took me about 2 minutes, and when I turned back to the lounge room, my son was gone. I called out that we were ready to leave. No answer. I look in the pantry. No answer. I start calling louder and louder. No answer. Looked out in the driveway. No answer. Backyard. Not there. By this time I was kinda starting to freak out. I ran upstairs and stuck my head into all of the bedrooms. Calling his name. Nothing. Ran back up to the front of the house. Up the driveway. Down next door's driveway to see if he was watching the trucks. Still nothing. Completely freaking out now. I didn't know whether to ring the police to report him missing, keep looking, or ask the neighbors for help. There had very recently been a very high-profile kidnapping of a young boy only a few months older than my son. I was a mess. I had literally looked everywhere he could have been. After what felt like an hour, I started to run back upstairs and he was just there. At the top of the stairs. I collapsed onto the stairs, hugging him and crying. He was just bewildered, the poor little thing. Turns out he had gone out onto my bedroom balcony upstairs to watch the trucks next door. Because the balcony extended out a little past the door, I couldn't see him when I looked through the room as he was hidden behind the exterior wall. He couldn't hear me calling because of the trucks. When I looked back at my watch, it had been 4 to 5 minutes since I first noticed him missing. It felt like hours. I cried so many times that day and the following week when I remembered what it had felt like for 5 measly minutes when another mom nearby had been experiencing that same feeling for, at that stage, weeks and weeks. This happened 4 years ago and the other child has never been found. Pensive face. Waiting in front of the bathroom because I need to pee but my brother locked the door. Waiting for that pregnancy test result, regardless of how you want the result to sway. Alright, that's about it for this one. Be sure to hit that like button. Leave a comment down below. If you want to see more awesome content, be sure to subscribe. Don't forget to hit that silver bell too. Thanks for watching.